Hello everyone, and welcome to the Prado Museum for another of our weekly sessions in English here with the American Friends of the Prado Museum. Today we're going to be talking about an exceptional artist. We'll be talking about Giovanni Lanfranco, a remarkable place, the Palace of Buen Retiro, and also an interesting subject, a unique subject, which is Naumachia. So this is a Naumachia, a Roman Naumachia by Giovanni Lanfranco. So what is a Naumachia? Let's start with that. What is a Naumachia? What is painted here? Well, this is a representation of an ancient Roman tradition. This is the simulation, the recreation of military battles, of naval battles in ponds, but these were recreations that the context of fighting was false, but that the fighting was very real and that the participants would actually fight to the death. This was a similar sort of entertainment like we can think of with Gladiators, but with the added element of waters and boats. And Naumachias were constructed, they were conducted in these large constructions that were dedicated specifically for this kind of event. And in the Renaissance, during this time when there's this fascination with classical culture and an interest in archaeology and understanding some of those spaces that were around them, seeing what they were used for, there was a revived interest in Naumachias, and so Naumachias actually were held. Now, without the element of fighting to the death, these were purely theatrical, these were purely a spectacle, but they were held in the Renaissance. And even in the 17th century, they were held in Madrid, in the pond of the Palace of Buen Retiro, in the gardens of the Palace of Buen Retiro, which, if you know Madrid and you know Retiro Park, is the pond that's in Retiro Park. And so what we can see are these two boats with different people that are fighting. There's more boats in the background, and in the very back we can see that there's spectators looking on. We can see the architecture behind them, and because of that element of spectacle, we can tell that this is a Naumachia, that this is not a real battle, that this is part of this spectacle of Naumachia. And notice the interest in the helmets, and in the skirts and the tunics, all of the clothing, all of those details that show us that the interest of the artist in these times, and the veracity of those details. There's a strong use of shadow as well that's really notable, that shows all of the muscles, all of the musculature, all of the anatomy of those figures, and really captures the physical tension of the moment. Lanfranco worked for a time in Rome, and in Rome he certainly would have been familiar with the work of Caravaggio and his really particular treatment of light, and this certainly would have been an important influence for him. And we know that there are several preparatory drawings for this study as well that are studying all of the different ways to represent those bodies and all of these different contortions, all of these different gestures. So it's something that was really important to Lanfranco. And not just in the men who are fighting, but also in the men who are rowing. We can see the backs of the men who are rowing, and they have this beautiful anatomy that seems supernaturally and absolutely monumental, that might make us think of that monumental anatomy, those bodies of the paintings of Michelangelo. And actually, if we look to this side of the painting in this corner, we actually see that there is this man who's hanging off the side of the boat, and he seems a little bit more individualized than the rest of the people in the painting, and he's looking directly at us. And this has actually been identified as a portrait of the artist himself, as Lanfranco. And in this painting, which is really large, it's difficult to see because it's so high up in this gallery, but it's a really large painting, and it shows Lanfranco's dexterity, his capability of tackling these complex subjects on really large surfaces, with lots of figures and then with lots of gestures, with lots of different psychological dispositions as well. And this is one of the reasons that Lanfranco was known for his work painting frescoes, and particularly his fresco of San Andrea della Valle, which is in the dome of that church, a beautiful fresco. And Lanfranco he's a painter from Parma, and He wasn't born into an artistic family. Actually, when he was young, he did some drawing. He had some artistic talent, but he actually worked as a page for a count in Parma, and that count noticed his artistic ability and actually got him started in the workshop of the Carracci with Agostino Carracci. And working with Carracci, he worked with Carracci in Bologna. After Agostino died, Lanfranco decided to go to Rome to work with Agostino's brother, Annibale. And in this circle of the Carraccis, he was in touch with other painters that we might recognize that were also part of this circle as well, like Francesco Albani. We have these two paintings by Francesco Albani here. And then also in this room nearby, we have other paintings by Guido Reni as well, like this wonderful Virgin of the Chair by Guido Reni. So he stayed in Rome for some time, but in 1633 he decided to leave Rome and to go to Naples. And when he's in Naples, he's flooded with work there. He was really popular and he had a lot of commissions. And he stayed in Naples really until almost the very end of his life. So he lives out almost the rest of his life in Naples. And it is there in Naples that he gets an important commission from the Count of Monterrey. The Count of Monterrey was the Viceroy of Naples. We have to remember at this time that Naples is it's really part of the Spanish crown. Naples, Milan, Sicily, Sardinia, a big part of the Italian peninsula is part of the Spanish crown. And so the social connections, the artistic connections, the political connections between Spain and Italy at this time were incredibly important. And so because of this, he gets this important commission from the Count of Monterrey to work on paintings for the Palace of Buen Retiro. He painted at least 6 works for the Palace of Buen Retiro, and 5 of them are here at the Prado. And the Palace of Buen Retiro was a palace that was built by order of Philip IV. It was in a place where there already was a bit of a royal residence, but then that residence was expanded and not just expanded, but really constructed an entire new palace, which is the Palace of Buen Retiro, which is actually around the area that we're standing right now. There are actually most of the palace has been destroyed, but there are a few existing buildings that do actually form part of the museum's campus, like the Casón del Buen Retiro, which is the library and the research center for the Prado Museum, or the Salón de Reinos. And the Salón de Reinos is actually currently being remodeled, and in the next coming years is also going to be an expanded exhibition space for the Prado Museum. So that's more exciting things to look forward to in the future. But this palace was really around this area where we're standing right now. And when Philip IV made the decision to make this palace, he didn't want to take paintings necessarily from other royal spaces, but he wanted to commission and purchase new paintings to decorate that area. And so there was a lot of paintings that were being commissioned during this time with this connection with Italy. And so the Count of Monterrey helps with these commissions, and he hires Lanfranco and a lot of other painters, but Lanfranco, to do some of these paintings that end up being on the subject of the history of Rome. There were some 34 paintings that were done on the subject of the history of Rome, actually. And again, Lanfranco made 6 of them. 5 of them are here. And so why would you want a painting of the history of Rome in a Spanish palace? What's the connection here? Why would we want the Naumachia in this palace of Philip IV? Well, this is actually an erudite and a cultivated way to show this idea of continuity, demonstrating the link between Philip IV and his palace and his reign with the grandiosity of the world of the Roman emperors. So it's a beautiful painting, and it talks about an interesting time in art history and an interesting time in the history of this collection, the 17th century, with these connections between Spain and Italy. And I hope that you've enjoyed hearing a little bit more about it today, and that you'll join us again next week for more conversations in English. Thank you.